Jelly box.
Jacob Marley was dead to begin with, a point all too emphasized by the fact that his name had been scratched off the sign of the counting-house. The remaining name of the sole living partner was that of the stingiest, grumpiest, meanest man in town, Ebenezer Scrooge. A miserable miser of a man, Scrooge was reclusive and kept to himself. No one ever went out of their way to greet him or exchange pleasantries, but he would not have appreciated it anyway. He was far too busy of a man to be bothered by the everyday niceties of the common man. On this cold December day, Christmas Eve to be precise, he made his way through the slush and snow as though his cold heart prevented him from feeling it. The door to his counting-house creaked and complained from years of poor maintenance as he made his way in. A mousy man, tall but timid, stood by the coal-burning stove in the center of the room, in the futile hope of keeping his hand warm.
Cratchit, what are you doing away from your desk? I don't pay you to stand around.
No, Mr. Scrooge. I mean, yes, Mr. Scrooge. Sorry, sir.
Cratchit ran back to his desk, patting his arms in the hope to remove some of the chill. Scrooge settled himself at his own desk in front of the office. The ink in his inkwell was nearly frozen over, but he paid it no mind. Scrooge began counting as he reviewed the freshly balanced books. Suddenly the door swung open with the same creaking protest. In walked a young man who looks to be about 30 or so. He was smartly dressed, though his clothes showed a bit of wear. It was his broad smile and cheerful eyes that drew the attention of those around him.
Merry Christmas, Uncle. Bah, humbug. Christmas a humbug? Surely you don't mean that, Uncle. I do. Any man who goes around with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stick of holly through his heart. Now, Uncle, is that any way to talk on such a day? Tomorrow is Christmas. It is a happy time. What is so happy about it? Christmas has never put another penny in your pocket. What right have you to be merry? You're poor enough. What right have you to be gloomy? You're rich enough. Do you have a purpose in coming here, or did you wish to merely irritate me? I came, Uncle, for the same reason I do every year. To invite you to Christmas dinner. And I will give you the same answer as always. No. Now go away and spread your Christmas nonsense elsewhere. It isn't nonsense, Uncle. You keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine. But you don't keep it at all. Let me leave it alone, then. Uncle, Christmas is a time of love and giving and holding our loved ones dear, and I say God bless it.
Well said, Master Fred.
Cratchit.
Sorry, Mr. Scrooge.
Bob! I almost didn't see you there. You should have said something. How is the family?
They're doing well, thank you.
Cratchit, get back to work, or you'll be spending Christmas looking for another job.
Sorry, Mr. Scrooge.
I must be going now, Uncle. I promised my wife I would pick up a few things before returning home. Your wife? Bah! What, Uncle? Why did you bother getting married? What an odd question. Marriage is just as foolish a practice as Christmas. Uncle, I married because I fell in love. And I am happy in my marriage, and I am happy celebrating Christmas. Then do so on your own time and leave me be. Good afternoon. Oh, Uncle, really? I said good afternoon. Very well, I'll go. But the invitation still stands. Merry Christmas, Bob.
Merry Christmas, Master Fred.
And a particularly Merry Christmas to you, Uncle. Bah, humbug.
No sooner had Fred left than two men entered through the door. One was tall and stately, the other short and portly. Both were kind-looking men, well-dressed but in a humble way. Scrooge glared up at the two and grumbled under his breath. The gentlemen removed their hats and smiled.
Are we in the presence of Mr. Scrooge and Mr. Marley?
Marley has been dead for 7 years. I am Ebenezer Scrooge.
A pleasure to meet you, sir. I know this is a busy day indeed, so I'll make our business brief. We are collecting donations for the poor and downtrodden.
Are you now?
This time of year is hard on so many of the less fortunate, and I was wondering how much we can put you down for.
Nothing.
You wish to remain anonymous?
I wish to be left alone.
But, sir, these people need help.
Are there no poorhouses? No workhouses?
There are, sir, but all are overrun as is.
What of the prisons? Have they all closed?
No, sir, but many would rather die than go to such places.
Well, good. If they'd rather die, then they'd better do so and decrease the surplus population.
My word.
Now, if there's nothing else, gentlemen, then I bid you good afternoon.
But, sir...
I said good afternoon.
And so, completely astonished by Scrooge's cruel attitude, the two gentlemen left. Scrooge began muttering under his breath in irritation as he resumed reviewing the calculations. Before too long, the clock on the wall began to chime, signaling the end of the workday. Immediately, Bob Cratchit began to ready himself to leave.
Where are you going, Cratchit? You know that clock is 2 minutes fast.
Yes, Mr. Scrooge, but it's just that tomorrow is...
Bah! I know. And if you say that word one more time, I'll throw you out in the snow. It's a poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December.
Scrooge reached into his money bag and pulled out a few meager coins.
Here, your week's wages, and, as you are already prepared to leave, you may do so. But I expect to see you tomorrow 2 minutes earlier to make up the time.
But Mr. Scrooge, sir, I was hoping with it being the holiday and all, I might have the day off tomorrow.
You wish to be off on a perfectly good work day? Bah!
Bob waited for the rest of the rebuke, but when none came, he made his way to the door.
You may have the whole day tomorrow, Cratchit. But I expect you to be here all the earlier the next day.
Yes, Mr. Scrooge. Thank you, sir.
And Cratchit left, with a giant smile on his face, leaving Scrooge alone to lock up. Scrooge left the counting-house in a worse mood than when he had arrived. He made his way down the same cold, snowy streets, following the same path he always did, until he reached his townhouse, now a large dilapidated shack, patched and thatched in the cheapest way. The old miser made his way to the door and reached for the knob, when suddenly, before his eyes, the knocker began to morph and change the face of his long-dead partner.
Jacob Marley.
Startled, Scrooge all but leapt back. When he looked again, the knocker returned to its normal state. Scrooge scoffed.
All this Christmas talk must have exhausted me into hallucinating.
Scrooge stared at the knocker a moment longer, before shaking his head and grabbing the doorknob to let himself in.
Humbug.
Scrooge proceeded to his usual evening activities, which consisted of readying himself for bed before eating a bit of cold porridge and stale bread. Unfortunately for him, tonight would be anything but usual. Even as he ate, the sound of chains rattling echoed quietly through the room, causing Scrooge to light every candle, something he never did before he resumed eating. Scrooge, hearing the ghostly voice, nearly dropped his plate.
Who's there? Show yourself, intruder!
And the intruder did so. Jacob Marley, pale and translucent, made himself known, covered in ghostly chains that clanked and scraped against the creak floorboards. The face of his old partner was long and gaunt, and wrapped with a bandage. Scrooge was terrified.
Spirit! What do you want with me?
Much.
Who are you?
In life I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
No, you cannot be real. Just some illusion brought on by indigestion.
Hear me, Ebenezer. I am as real now as you.
I believe you now, Spirit. But please, Jacob, tell me why you have come.
I have come to warn you to change your ways. Turn away from your greed. See these chains? They are forged from years of cruel and selfish behaviors I conducted out of greed. They are my punishment.
But it was never personal. It was business.
Business? Kindness and compassion for my fellow man should have been my business. Now I am doomed to carry these chains as you will be if you do not change your ways. For as long and as heavy as my burden is, yours will be far greater.
Jacob, please. Say something comforting to me.
This is all the comfort I can offer. A chance to change your ways. Tonight you will be visited by 3 spirits, past, present, and future. Learn from what they show you, and you may yet be spared this fate.
But Jacob...
Expect the first ghost when the clock chimes 1.
Scrooge continued to call out to his former friend, but the spirit vanished, the haunting message echoing around him. Shaken by the experience, Scrooge decided to try and put it all behind him, and crawled into his bed, pulling the canopy curtains closed tight. Scrooge's sleep was a fitful one. Jacob's eerie warning continued to echo through his mind. He scarcely seemed to have gotten any rest at all before the clock chimed the foretold hour. He lay there, waiting, listening, watching. He began to feel as if it had all been truly a very strange dream. But a soft light, not unlike a single lit candle, pierced the space between his canopy drapes. Reluctantly, Scrooge parted the drapes and looked out to find a small figure, childlike in appearance, and yet not a child at all.
Are you the spirit whose coming was told to me?
I am.
Who or what are you?
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
No, your past.
What brings you here?
Your welfare. Now take my hand and we shall...
Go where?
To see what I must show you, in hopes that you may learn.
Scrooge took the spirit's hand. After a moment or two of hesitation, instantly they flew through the air, over the city, and through time. When they stopped, Scrooge found himself at his boyhood school.
I know this place. I spent my boyhood here. I recognize those boys. They were my friends. Hello.
They cannot see you or hear you. These are visions of what had been.
Before his eyes, the years passed, one lonely Christmas after another.
Father never sent for me. He wanted my schooling to come first.
And yet you did go home. A young woman came for you?
A young woman appeared and took the hands of young Scrooge.
I've come to take you home for Christmas, Ebenezer.
father finally listened to my and mother's pleas.
Oh, Fran! This is the happiest Christmas ever.
Your sister really loved you.
She did. She was my only friend. Until the day she died. Christmas.
Yet part of her still lives.
Spirit?
She had a son, did she not?
Fred.
Before his eyes, the scene melted away to reveal the place of his former employer.
This is Fezziwig's. I'd know it anywhere. It was my first employer. I learned all I knew about business from him. He was always so kind to me when I was his clerk. And so giving. Oh, the parties he threw. He loved Christmas.
And it was here that you met someone very important?
Just as the spirit spoke these words, a beautiful young woman, petite but spirited, appeared and crossed the room to speak to young Ebenezer.
Well, I'd forgotten how beautiful she was. I'm not shy.
As Scrooge watched his younger self dance with Belle, the scene faded away to the counting house many years later.
Oh no, spirit, not this day.
Watch.
Belle stood before Scrooge, older, richer, and colder than before.
Ebenezer, you've done all you wished to. We've been engaged for many years. How much longer shall I wait?
I must continue to ensure our financial security. I am thinking only of you.
You did once. I know at the start you wished only to provide for me, that you loved me. But now you love another that I cannot win your love back from.
Another? Who?
Not who, but what. Money. You love it more than you ever loved me, or ever will again.
And Belle removed the ring from her finger and placed it on his desk, tears in her eyes.
Goodbye, Ebenezer. I do wish for your happiness.
Then Belle went to the door, leaving young Ebenezer to himself.
No, Belle. Come back. Go after her, you fool!
I told you, Ebenezer. They cannot hear you.
Take me home, spirit. I wish to see no more.
The spirit nodded, and Scrooge found himself back in his room, in his bed. Were it not for the chill on his hands, feet, and cheeks, he would have sworn it was only a bad dream.
To show me such things. Things I cannot change. Humbug.
Scrooge fell back into a fitful sleep, and when the bell chimed the second hour, a bright light, warm and welcoming, lured him from his bed. The light came from behind a door that hadn't been there before. Scrooge opened the door to find a feast, food larger than any normal man could eat, and at the head of it all was a large, bearded spirit, laughing with the kindest eyes and the richest smile Scrooge had ever seen.
Come in and know me better, man.
Are you the second spirit?
I am! I am the ghost of Christmas present. You've never seen the likes of me before?
Never. But show me what it is you wish to show me.
Very well. Touch my robe and we shall go.
Scrooge did as the spirit said, and once more he found that they were flying through time and space, until they stopped before a modest-sized townhouse. Inside, Fred and a few other people sat laughing. Scrooge watched as they appeared to be playing a game.
Come on then. Guess what I am.
We've already guessed a lot. Can't you give us a hint?
Oh, very well. Your hints are the words old and mean.
Oh, now I think I've got it. You've said it's an often unwanted creature that lives to be alone and is quite old. It's your uncle.
Yes, my love. You've guessed it. Is love. I can't be his wife. How dare they?
Watch.
I know it wasn't in good taste.
Oh, Fred, honestly, the man is a miserable miser. You invite him every year and he never comes.
That may be true, but he is still my uncle, my only blood relative, and my mother loved him dearly. And if she could treasure someone like him, then I know he is a good man, and I wish him a Merry Christmas. A toast to my Uncle Scrooge. I never realized how much like Fan he truly is. Kind and thoughtful, like his mother.
Come, Scrooge. My time is growing short, and we've one last place to go.
Scrooge found himself in front of a much smaller, more humble shack of a home. Smoke plumed from the modest chimney, and the sound of young laughter could be heard. Scrooge walked to the dusty window and peeped inside. A modest-looking woman, matronly but still rather young, over the hot hearth. A small bird turned on a spit above the flames, with plenty of room to spare for a small kettle of food.
Whatever could be keeping your father and Tim?
I'm sure they'll be along soon, Mother.
No sooner had Peter spoken this than the door opened, and in walked a young woman, the exact image of her mother.
Merry Christmas, Mother.
Martha, I thought you wouldn't make it home. Won't your father and Tim be surprised?
Here they come now. Martha, hide!
The door opened once more, and Bob Cratchit walked in, with a young lad on his shoulders. The boy was dressed in the same poor manner as his sibling, but in his tiny hand he carried a tiny crutch.
I never knew Bob had such a big family.
Sorry we're so late, my dear. Service went a bit longer than usual, but it was a great sermon indeed.
Father took me to see children skating on the frozen pond.
And one day you will be one of them.
Mrs. Cratchit looked at Bob disapprovingly before Bob set Tim on the floor. Scrooge watched as the sickly child limped with his crutch across the floor.
What a wonderful meal you've made, Mother. The best Christmas dinner ever.
Scrooge watched as Mrs. Cratchit placed the tiny bird on the table with a bowl of porridge and some bread. Barely enough to feed one man, let alone a family.
Where is the rest of their feast?
This is all he could afford on the meager wages you provide.
Merry Christmas, Father.
Martha!
Martha, you made it!
Of course I did. I couldn't very well miss Christmas now, could I?
Come, Martha, help me set the table.
The family settled around the small table, smiles all around. Scrooge saw for the first time what warmth and love truly looked like. A family that had so little was so happy and grateful for what they did have. It warmed his cold heart.
To Mr. Scrooge, the founder of this feast.
The founder of our feast, indeed. Robert, the way he treats you is unconscionable. And you've been nothing but loyal and dependable. You deserve more.
Darling, must we speak so harshly at Christmas? Mr. Scrooge is a difficult man at times, it's true, but on today of all days, I wish him well. I'll toast to his health and be thankful for what he has provided.
I suppose, in light of the day, and for your sake, my love, I shall drink to his health.
Merry Christmas!
And God bless us, everyone!
And Scrooge saw in Tiny Tim the true innocence of love and generosity, a thing which touched him. That a boy so small and sickly, with so little to be thankful for, could be so kind. Scrooge felt something change within him. The reminder of all his foolishness cost him, Fred's love for him not unlike that of Fan, and finally Tim's generosity came all at once, warming him. Scrooge staggered back.
Spirit, what will happen to Tim? Will the child live?
That is beyond my determination. However, I see a shadow of an empty chair, and a small crutch without an owner.
Spirit, say it won't be so.
I cannot be certain, but if he is to die, then he should do so, and decrease the surplus population.
Scrooge felt guilt stab his heart, as his own cruel words were thrown back in his face. How could he have been so heartless to the likes of Tiny Tim?
And my time grows short. But I have one last thing to show you.
The spirit pulled back his robes, and revealed 2 starving children, cold and thin enough to see their bones.
These can't be yours, spirit.
They are man's. Ignorance and want, and you should be aware of them going forward.
Is there nothing that can be done for them?
Are there no prisons? No poorhouses?
As Scrooge turned to look at the spirit for more answers, the bells began to toll the hour for the final spirit. Scrooge found the second spirit to be gone, and that he was now shrouded in darkness. As the final toll sounded through the darkness, Scrooge beheld a fearsome sight before him. A tall, dark figure, hooded and cloaked in all black, stood before him. Scrooge steeled his nerve and stepped forward, eager, in spite of its appearance, to greet his final visitor.
You are the third spirit.
The spirit said nothing, merely nodding to his question.
Lead me where you will. I have learned much this night, and I eagerly await your lesson as well.
The spirit pointed its long, gnarled finger, and as Scrooge looked that way, he saw shadowed figures in a dark alley laughing. All were haggard and clearly poor, and holding items Scrooge knew all too well.
Now you give me this gold watch, which is worth 6p, and if with all these lovely drapes, I'd say they're worth a couple of halfpennies.
2? After what I went through to get them?
Well, not like you put up much of a fight. Not where he is.
And no one's going to miss him enough to care that we took it.
Spirit, that is my watch, and those are my drapes. Am I the man they speak so cruelly of?
The spirit stayed silent, and pointed again, and Scrooge found himself in a familiar alley, in front of a house he'd seen once before already that night, but there was no warmth from the place. The lights were dim, and the movement within was slow.
This is Bob Cratchit's house. Surely I can find some cheer here.
As Scrooge looked through the window, he saw no happiness, no cheer. Mrs. Cratchit stood over the dying fire, crying as she tended the coals. Scrooge searched for the sign of such sadness and found the tiny crutch.
Oh no, spirit, not Tiny Tim.
Peter, could you find Linda and Martha for me?
Of course, Mother. They said they were going to keep an eye out for Father. He's walking a bit slower these days, ever since.
No sooner had young Peter said these words than the door opened. A rather worn-out-looking Bob entered his home. All signs of joy from Scrooge's previous visit were gone, replaced by a sullen, sad countenance.
Bob, welcome home. How was the service?
It was another good one. He would have liked it, you know?
Tim always did. I'll call the children to supper.
As Mrs. Cratchit left, Bob walked over to a small stool by the hearth and picked up the tiny crutch, clutching it to his chest, with tears in his eyes.
Oh no, spirit, not Tiny Tim. He deserved to live. Tell me this can be changed.
Again, the spirit said nothing, and pointed his grey, bony finger. Scrooge followed that line of sight. As the environment shifted around him, he found himself in a dark, cold cemetery, where 2 men with shovels laughed while standing over a gravestone.
How soon do we need to bury this geezer? I'm hungry.
Yeah, they want him covered before tomorrow morning. Of course, it ain't likely anyone cares enough to check.
Yeah, I heard the only person at the funeral was the parson.
Well, let's hurry up and do it. It's only going to get colder, and I, for one, don't want to freeze to death.
Scrooge watched in horror as the 2 men continued to laugh at the sad joke, at the expense of the deceased.
Spirit, whose name is on that stone? What kind of man would earn such disrespect and disgust?
The spirit merely pointed to the stone. Scrooge walked forward, and with a cold, shaky hand brushed away the dust from the surface. Instantly he fell back in terror. On the stone, clear as day, was the name Ebenezer Scrooge.
Oh, Spirit, say it isn't so. Tell me that this fate can be avoided, that this future can be changed. Please, Spirit, please. I promise to keep the spirit of Christmas in my heart. I promise to hold all that I've learned from you and your fellow spirits close and put my fellow man first. Please, please, please.
The ringing of the bells echoed through the room, and Scrooge woke in his own bed, in his own room, tangled in his sheets. At first he thought it might all have been a dream, but the chill on his skin and the dirt on his hands spoke as truly to him as the new warmth in his heart.
I'm alive, and I'm here. But what day is it?
And Scrooge jumped out of bed and ran to the window, threw open the drapes and the shutters, and looked out into the bright morning. Below, a lad passed on the street.
You there, boy! What day is it?
What day? It's Christmas Day!
Then I haven't missed it. Here, boy, do you know the Poulters on the next street?
I do, sir.
Good lad. Wait here a moment.
Scrooge ran to his coat and pulled out his change purse. He pulled out what he thought would be enough and ran back to the window, tossing the money to the boy.
Go to the shop, order the largest goose they have, and tell them to deliver it to the home of Bob Cratchit. Do that, and return to me, and I will pay you well for your trouble.
Yes, sir.
The boy ran off, and Scrooge hurried and dressed, then made his way out to the street. Unexpectedly, he ran into the two men who had been collecting money for the misfortunate. He promised them a hefty sum, leaving both men stunned. He then headed to his nephew Fred's, apologized for being unable to attend, but promised to make time for them on New Year's. Finally, he made his way to Bob Cratchit's. The house looked as inviting and warm as it had on his journey. Scrooge schooled his features back into the same dour expression he was known for, and then knocked on the door.
Mr. Scrooge, I thought you said I had the day off.
And you think a day off is satisfactory, do you?
No, Mr. Scrooge. I mean, yes, I mean... Oh, please, Mr. Scrooge, it's Christmas Day. If you have to do it, then please let it not be in front of my children.
But this is the best place to do so. Cratchit, I have come today to give you what has been coming for a long time. A promotion. I'm making you my new partner and giving you a true raise with a salary.
Oh, Bob!
But I don't understand. I mean, I don't know what to say, except... Thank you, Mr. Scrooge.
See, Father, Christmas is a time for miracles.
And you, young Tim, I will see to it personally that you will be walking in no time.
Bless you, sir.
God bless you indeed.
God bless us, everyone.
Scrooge was true to his word, and was as good of a man and better. And to Tiny Tim he was as a second father. Joy had returned to his heart and his life, and he embodied the true spirit of Christmas until the last.